Let's be real, facing a serious felony drug charge is an absolute nightmare. It's overwhelming, not just for the person arrested, but for their entire family. You know, the legal system can feel like a maze, especially when the stakes are this high. So today, what we're going to do is give you a map. We're going to break down exactly what happens after an arrest for a 11351 felony charge, step by step.
Okay, let's just dive right in. Imagine getting that call. A loved one is in jail. Your mind is just racing with a million questions, a ton of fear. What we're going to do here is lay out a clear roadmap for the journey ahead, starting with the charge itself and then covering the first moves you absolutely have to make.
So, first things first, let's demystify the charge that's at the center of all this. You're going to hear this number 11351 thrown around a lot. It points to a very specific part of the California Health and Safety Code, and, understanding what it actually means is really the first step to getting a handle on the whole situation.
So, Health and Safety Code 11351, in plain English, makes it a felony to have controlled substances with the intent to sell them. And notice that key phrase right there, intent to sell. This is the line the prosecution has to prove. They aren't just saying someone had drugs for their own use, they're arguing that they were planning to distribute them, which, as you can imagine, is a much, much more serious accusation.
So, you might be wondering, how do prosecutors prove intent if they never actually saw a sale happen? Well, this is where things get a little tricky. They build a case using circumstantial evidence. Think about it. They're going to look for things like a large quantity of the drug, maybe some digital scales, little baggies for packaging, a lot of cash, or even text messages that look like they're setting up deals. None of these things on their own are direct proof, but when you put them all together, they're used to paint a picture of intent.
And just to be super clear, this charge is for what the law considers really serious controlled substances. We're typically talking about drugs like cocaine, heroin, and powerful prescription opioids like fentanyl or oxycodone, especially when there's no valid prescription. The specific drug, and just as important, the amount of it, can totally change how severe the penalties could be.
All right, so once an arrest is made, the clock officially starts ticking. Those next 24 hours are just a whirlwind of procedures and paperwork that can be incredibly confusing for families on the outside. So let's walk through that process right now.
This is basically the booking process you see on TV. The person gets taken to jail, they're fingerprinted, photographed, and all their personal info gets plugged into the system. But two really critical things happen during this time. A judge sets a bail amount, that's the cost to get them out, and a date is scheduled for their very first court appearance. This is the information the family is just anxiously waiting to hear.
And that brings us to what is often the biggest and most immediate challenge for any family, that huge financial hurdle of bail. This is where a really stressful situation can start to feel completely impossible.
Let's not sugarcoat this, because this is a felony charge. The bail amounts are substantial. We're often talking about tens of thousands of dollars, a figure that for most families is just completely out of reach to pay in cash.
And, that bail amount isn't just a random number pulled out of thin air. A judge is following a set schedule and looking at several key factors. How serious is the charge? What was the quantity of the drugs? And what does the person's criminal history look like? All of this gets put into a calculation that decides the price of freedom.
So let's make this real. It is not uncommon at all for bail in these cases to be set at $50,000. Now, just imagine getting a call and being told you need to come up with 50 grand in cash right now to get your loved one home. For the vast majority of people, that's an impossible task.
So if paying the full amount is pretty much a non-starter, what's the alternative? Well, this is where the bail bond system comes into play. It offers a pathway to get someone released from jail so they can wait for their trial at home.
So you basically have two main options. You can pay the full bail amount, all $50,000, directly to the court in cash. Or you can work with a bail bond agent. In that scenario, you pay them a non-refundable fee, which is usually about 10% of the total. So for that $50,000 bail, you'd pay the agent $5,000, and they, in turn, guarantee the full 50 grand to the court.
What this system really does is make release accessible. A family can call a bail bondsman, give them the necessary info, pay that 10% premium, and then the bond company posts the full amount with the court. This gets the defendant released, which allows them to be home with family and, most importantly, to start actively helping with their own legal defense.
Getting out of jail is that huge first step, but it is far from the end of the journey. We have to look at the very serious potential consequences of a conviction and the immediate next steps a family absolutely should be taking.
The stakes in a case like this are just incredibly high. A conviction doesn't just mean possible state prison time and massive fines. It means having a permanent felony record. That's a label that creates lifelong barriers to getting a job, finding housing, and even educational opportunities. The consequences can truly follow a person for the rest of their life.
So, in that moment of crisis, what should you do? Here are the most important immediate steps. First, try to stay as calm as possible so you can make clear decisions. Gather the basic info about the arrest. Contact a reputable bail bondsman to get the release process started. And this next one is absolutely critical. Do not, I repeat, do not discuss the details of the case on recorded jail phones. Finally, and most importantly, start the process of finding an experienced criminal defense attorney right away.
You know, it all leads to a final, really important question. When you're up against a legal system that feels so overwhelmingly complex and intimidating, isn't knowledge the most powerful tool you have? Understanding the process isn't just about making you feel less scared. It's the first and most essential step you can take on the path toward justice.